Welcome to a daily dose of theological German bonus video. It's bonus in two respects. Number one, you get to see who I am for the first time on this channel. So, be sure to share this one with all your friends. Also, it's bonus because, this has nothing to do with theological German, but I had this funny thing happen to me. I was at a store here local in my town called Starsky, which is basically an Eastern European import store. And you know how it is with children. I was conned into purchasing some candies, and in particular I purchased some sour Soothers. At least I think that's what they are, because I got the package home and discovered that the entire thing is written in German. So I thought, you know what, we got to take a minute and translate what's on here. Okay, let's just see what we got here. Just a second. Let me get rid of some of this stuff here. And, what's that? Oh, yeah, those were good times. Go check out that series. There's a playlist there, 15 episodes. You can see what we did with that text. But anyway, I got to get all my intense studying out of the way. Okay, here we go. And let's see, what do we have here? So the first thing you see up here is this little isolated phrase, zum Teilen, which you'll see in a minute. It's very convenient that it's located so near to the top. That part of the bag is going to get cut off when you open this, and that's important, as you'll come to understand. Let me just actually write it out for you, though, because it's a little bit hard to read up there. Zum Teilen, and so you can see here we've got a capital T, and so that's telling us this is a noun, and also this is telling you that zu has been compounded with dem, the definite article. So this is clearly a noun, and yet when you look this up, at least when I looked it up in Collins Dictionary online, I didn't find a noun entry, but of course there's a verb, Teilen, and verbs can always be turned into nouns in a variety of ways. And so that seems to be what's going on here. Teilen, the verb, is to do with sharing. And so you'll see here to share, something like that is one possible kind of meaning. But really, most basically, it just means to divide or to split up. And so I think with this preposition zu in this isolated phrase, this is going to be translated something to the effect of toward the sharing, And so really what you're looking for is to understand the social function of this phrase to give you the full context for what you might find on a package in English. And many packages in English will say things like sharing size or great for sharing or some similar kind of expression. What else is on here? Well, let's see. We have this other word here. If you, again, think about the importance of context, the first time I glanced at that word, thought I was looking at an English package, and I thought it said savor. Because that's the only English word that would appear to look like that. But that thing that looks kind of like a V in the middle there is actually a U. And of course, this word has to be translated as sour. But when you look up this word in German, you'll see that it's an adjective, obviously. And of course, you do see here that it can mean something like sour, but also sharp or acidic. I don't think you're going to call these sharp soothers. Certainly not acidic soothers, but this is where your dictionary should give you all kinds of little helps. And so you wouldn't say acidic soother, because this tells you here that what you're actually looking at is the context of wine. You also can see here that this first definition means not sweet, which is why you might get sharp as opposed to sour. And so those are little cues to sort of pay attention to. You can also see here that you have ideas like in British, you might translate it as bad. So they're actually thinking of things like milk, right? Where you have sour milk. You're going to just call it bad milk, and things like that. So you have different kinds of contexts, and it gives you in your dictionary the different sorts of things that would go with those contexts. So here you see Gurke and herring, which I believe Gurke is going to mean a cucumber, and herring is a type of fish. And so in that context, you're going to say pickled, right? And in fact, if you think of the word sauerkraut, it's actually just German for pickled cabbage. And so you obviously are not going to call these pickled soothers. And yet, the reason why I bring this all up is to show you that your dictionary helps you with context, and you want to pick the right translation, because when you're presented with this many options, I mean, look at this, mad. Yeah, these are some mad, well, they're mad sour. Anyway, actually, they're not. I tasted one. They're not sour at all. But the point being, you got to pick the right translation. And while it sounds silly and ridiculous that you would say pickled soothers, that's exactly the type of thing that people do in their theological German exams.
they get a passage and they start translating it and they pick the wrong word and they don't know. It sounds fine to them because the whole thing was confusing to begin with because it was, Karl Barth or who knows what. And the next thing you know, you've got something which would sound to a native German speaker as ridiculous as pickled Soothers. Then you also have here an actual sentence where it says, Haribo makes children happy. This is pretty straightforward. You've got here your third person singular present tense verb there. Haribo is the subject. You will actually have to just recognize that if you try to look up this big word, Haribo, you're going to find out there's no translation. That's actually the brand name, which is kind of intuitive, I think, the way the package is laid out. But you have your third person verb, your subject, Kinder there is going to be the object, and this is actually going to be a double accusative verb, or maybe you want to think of this adjective as a complement, but either way, Haribo makes children happy, and you have a continuation of the sentence down here, and Erwachsene also. So let's just quickly look at this Erwachsene because this is here a noun. It's got a capital E on the front, so you know it's a noun, but this also is actually a verb. What happens is you take a verb, you take the past participle of that verb. Participles, of course, can be adjectives. Adjectives, of course, can be substantive, which means they can function like nouns, and that's how you end up with essentially what is a past participle being a noun in this case, and you probably know what it says, but I just want to show you how this works because it's interesting. So you take the verb erwachsen, and of course you could just take the first part of that verb off. You would have the verb wachsen, which means to grow. Erwachsen means to grow up or to traverse the years of childhood, as it were. You can kind of think of it in that way. And the past participle of erwachsen is the same as the infinitive, so it looks just exactly like what you see there. Some past participles would have a ge prefix. This verb doesn't, so the past participle is the same form here. And so to then make that substantive and turn it into a noun, you just would have to capitalize the E. And so if you just capitalize the E, and then if you put another E on the end to make it plural, and you have a noun, which means somebody who has undergone the process of growing up, who has traversed the years of childhood. In other words, an adult, or as we often say in English, a grown-up, which incidentally, and this is why I wanted to go through this, you will notice that in English we have a verb to grow up, which by the way is kind of like the separable verbs in German because to grow up is not the same thing as to grow. We need the up on there. It really is part of the verbal idea. The point being, the verb to grow up, if you made it into a past participle, would be grown up. And so we turn that into a noun just in exactly the same way as the Germans do. So you can see that even though these words are not cognates in German, the word grow gets modified to grow up, gets turned into a past participle to be grown up, and becomes a noun. And so you can just see how German and English just intuitively do many of the same things in terms of how they function as languages. Okay, but we still don't know what's in this package. I mean, we know that it's something sour. We know that this picture is here, which is really not helping at all as far as I can tell. It's probably making things worse. I don't know what those things are. Here's the point, though. We're going to go ahead and translate this last bit. Kinder Schnuller. So my German is just terrible, by the way. I'm pronouncing this all wrong. But nevertheless, if you look up Schnuller in the dictionary, you're going to see that it means something like a dummy, a pacifier, a teat, or a nipple. Now, here's the point, people. Context is always king, and I really don't want anyone to fail their German exam, and that's why I'm belaboring this point also because this is hilarious. The point is you've got to get the right translation for the context or you will not do well in German. Okay, so, well, first of all, soother is not on this list. I wanted to call these things sour soothers, and soother's not actually one of the things on the list. So obviously this dictionary is not exhaustive. Incidentally, neither is the word binky. And you might be saying, well, obviously that's a made-up word. What is that? Well, over in Boston, my wife's cousin calls this type of a device that we're about to look at a binky. So here's a binky. Okay, I didn't Google binky. I Googled pacifier, and here you go. So this is a binky, a pacifier, a soother. It's a device you put in a baby's mouth and it soothes the baby, hence soother. It pacifies the baby, hence pacifier. I don't know what binky is. You know, though, it's not surprising because I find that many of the things which are said in and around the Boston area shouldn't probably really count as English anyways, but I digress. But where are you going to get nipple or teat? I mean, this is kind of, you probably can already see there's a bit of a context there. Do you notice that it says auf Flasche? You've got to pay attention to these cues. That means if this is on a bottle, you're not going to call it a pacifier. You're going to call it a teat if you're in Britain, or a nipple if you're in the US. So we can Google image search that too. Now don't Google image search nipple, please, I beg you. However, if you were to Google image search, let's just say a baby bottle, you'll find all the nipples. There they are, you see? Okay, there's a nipple, there's a nipple, there's a nipple, there's 3 nipples over here. Okay, so now you can see the context that in German, a Schnuller can be something on a bottle that a baby sucks on, or it can be something not on a bottle that a baby sucks on. So it has this semantic range, and you've got to pay attention to your dictionary entry to the cues that tell you things like, for instance, on a bottle, that tell you things, for instance, like whether the US or the British say things in different ways, because obviously if you said dummy in your translation, depending on who was grading your exam, they might think you got it wrong. The point is, you got to pay attention to those cues, and it really helps too if you just know something about the wider context. And so Kinder down here actually helps you as well, because this actually tells you that, I got to get a better color here. Kinder tells you that this is with reference to children, and so you kind of have some context from that as well. So the point is, you are not going to ever want to translate this as children's nipples. That would be terrible. You would fail your exam, and you should never buy such a product. However, I do think perhaps we could all agree that from now on, we should be referring to this type of candy as a pickled binky. And so now you know why it is that Haribo makes grown-ups also happy. I've been quite happy with this whole presentation, and I believe I've shared something with you too, actually, something quite important that makes me feel not so bad about now cutting that off and keeping these all to myself.
It really sticks in your teeth. I gotta be honest, it actually tastes German. Anyway, there you go. A bonus round of your daily dose of German. And who said German couldn't be fun? I guess the only downside is none of you got to share that with me. But, well, go ahead and get yourself a package. So, I think I'll go ahead and try one.
Daddy, it said you were supposed to share them.
Oh, that's true. Want one?
I do. Here, Teresa. Here,
Sure. What do you guys think?
They're good. Purple.